Welcome to the Nebraska Shootaround podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Padilla, and joining me as always is Jacob Bigelow. And this is not quite what we expected to be talking about, but I'm sure Nebraska fans are very happy about how the last week of Nebraska basketball went. How are you feeling about it, Biggs?
I have some words to take back, some things to repent for. If you listened to our last episode, I basically told you to not watch the basketball game yesterday if your life depended on it, mostly because as somebody who grew up a fan and then was a part of the program for 3 years, kind of been conditioned to want to avoid pain, and that's kind of what most expected to happen, and quite the opposite took place yesterday afternoon in Omaha. So this is not where I thought we'd be at this point, but here we are, and we're here to talk about it. So
I think we were heading into last week just hoping to get one win to talk about, but we get two, including the 63-53 win over then number 7 Creighton in Omaha. The first win over Creighton in Omaha since 2004, and the first regular season win over Creighton in Omaha since 1995. 2004 game was the NIT game. Had not happened in a long time. When were you born?
1997.
Okay, so yeah, you were not alive the last time Nebraska won a regular season game in Omaha.
I was not.
I was 3.
I was told by my dad that I was at the NIT game in 2004. I was 7, so I don't really have a clear memory of that. But kind of funny that the winning play of that game was the guy who's now doing color for Nebraska on the radio, blocking a shot at the end. But yeah, that's the past. We got to talk about the now, man.
We will. Let's start with the past. We'll get to what everybody wants to talk about. We got to knock out that Boston College game first.
Yep.
But hey, you declared it a must-win. And they took care of business in impressive fashion. That was an 88-67 win over a bad Boston College team. And man, are they bad.
There's a lot of bad basketball in the bottom of the ACC this year. And Boston College is no exception. I think the sicko bowl of basketball might be Boston College Louisville whenever that comes up on the schedule at the rate we're going.
Oh no.
That just sounds painful to think about. But yeah, Boston College is not very good. That was my biggest takeaway from that game. And you said it. I declared it to be a must win, and they didn't just win. They imposed their will in the second half. Just completely put the foot on the pedal, and they did everything they could to finish the Big Ten ACC Challenge with a 500 record, and
unfortunately, the rest of the league kind of let them down. I believe it was 8-6 was the final, right?
I think you're right.
So, oh well. Let's talk about Nebraska. It was kind of back and forth early in the first half. They went in just leading by 3 at halftime, and then just dominated, put up 51 points in the second half, shot almost 70% from the field, shot 9 of 13 from 3, only turned the ball over 4 times, just a fantastic performance. And we have to start with Keisei Tominaga, of course, because some of the stuff he was doing in that game, like you and I were like laughing at each other. It's just we could not keep it in check, reacting to some of his reactions down there after some of the shots he made and the assist he made to Derek Walker for the dunk. But it was tying his career high, 23 points for Tominaga, on 7 of 8 shooting, including 4 of 5 from 3 and 5 free throws. And he also had 2 assists and did all that in just 25 minutes. So that, even better, CJ Wilcher got going in the second half, hit 4 threes, finished with 14 points. So if you have Tominaga and Wilcher hitting shots in the same game, I feel pretty good about Nebraska's chance to be competitive in that game and to hang around and have a chance to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if they're both going at the same time, that opens up the lane for this new attack the basket, mentality that they're showing. They're definitely emphasizing starting off inside and working their way out. They're cutting back on just chucking up the silly threes that we've seen throughout the to start the season so far. And like you said, those are the 2 best shooters on the team by a wide margin. And they need at least one of them to get going. But best case scenario is to have them both on their A game like they were against BC. And completely and totally agree. I mean, we were just cackling at KSA during that game. No one has more fun than that dude playing ball. I think you tweeted, I hope you find something in life you enjoy as much as KSA enjoys hitting threes. I mean, the sequence where that man hit a 3, it went into a timeout, and he ran down the court and chest bumped the hoop at the other end of the court and then ran back to the huddle during the timeout. I mean, that was peak.
And he did that after spreading his legs and getting down low and posing at the end of the shot he made, watching it go through.
Yeah.
And that because Boston College called the timeout as soon as it went through. So he held that thing there, had teammates in his ear because he hit it right in front of the bench. And then he proceeded to run down to the other end of the court and, chest bump the basket stanchion for some reason. Apparently didn't have a teammate that was ready to do it with him. But, And then even better, the reaction to the assist to Walker for the dunk, throwing up the goggles. And
not just throwing, I was going to say, not just throwing up the goggles.
Holding him there the entire way back down the court, posing at half court until Walker got back with him, and then finally getting back on defense and finding his man. So, that was certainly fun to watch. And they got 2, 4, 5 guys in double figures. Sam Griso only had to take 4 shots, had 6 assists, just two turnovers. Walker only played 18 minutes with foul trouble and still scored 10 points on 5 of 6 shooting. So, those are your 2 best players, and they combined for 18 points, and you still won by 20. So that was, I mean, that Nebraska did what it needed to do in that game. You're not gonna get many games where they hit 12 threes. That's not the recipe for success. But in that game, they had it going, and so why not lean into it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a prime example of kind of the roller coaster that we're on with Keisei Tominaga.
Yes.
Just the ebbs and flows, not the ebbs and flows of his stock, like we saw in Evan Mayakawa's tweet about players John Rothstein has said buy stock now on. That is a great thread. I highly recommend you go find that. Evan Miyakawa is a great follow for just random things like that.
For the context, Casey was the top of the list for most negative stocks that he told you to buy. Casey didn't end up having a great year last year after Rothstein told you to buy his stock. But if you bought it last year and you're holding on to it, it might be making a turn.
It might. It's gonna still be a little roller coastery, but when it's high, it's high, man. And we saw it at its peak against BC.
So, and just kind of on his season as a whole, just diving into numbers a little bit, he's been lights out on catch and shoot, open look type of deal. He's still struggling with the off the screens, off the handoffs type. So basically shooting off movement. But the cuts and the catch and shoot threes, he's been unbelievable at. So I know they run a lot of those actions to get him looks, the handoffs, the coming off screens. Still need to have the elite shooters, the kind of shot variety, that's how you become one of the best. Like K-State's still kind of you get him open, he can hit the catch and shoot three at this point. So not quite there to be a more versatile shooter, but playing off guys like Walker and Griso, he should be able to get some looks. So hopefully he'll keep doing that, and some of the other parts of his game will come around. But I think that's probably enough Boston College talk. Let's get to the reason people are probably listening to this, if anybody is. The rivalry win, 63-53 in Omaha, like I said, and boy, was that an ugly, ugly game. So going in, it seemed like the game plans, I was a little confused by both sides' game plans, but Nebraska's game plan was basically to pack in the paint, not give up, not let that pick and roll lob game get going with Kalkbrenner, with the guards getting into the paint. They were doubling on every post touch. They were sending guys to the gaps on drives. They were hedging on ball screens to try to make it really tough for Creighton to get inside the lane. And they were willing to give up threes. And Creighton took 43s. And my buddy Matt DeMarinis put together a reel of, like, I think 32 of those 43s that he determined were really high quality looks. And they made 9 of those 32. And they shot 1 of 8 on the tougher looks from 3. So I don't know how many times out of 10 this game plan results in a Nebraska win, but Fred Hoiberg, when you're coming in as the underdog, you got to take some risks. You're not going to be able to shut everything down. You got to pick your poison. They were willing to live with Creighton taking threes, and for the second straight game, Creighton could not shoot, could not hit enough threes to make it worth it. And this is coming off, so they were rough in the opener, and that's actually St. Thomas. Their game plan most closely resembled what Nebraska did to Creighton of anybody they faced so far this season. And in the 5 games between that St. Thomas game in the opener and the Texas game on Thursday, where Creighton fell in a rock fight, shot 4-27 from 3 in that game. In the 5 games between, and that includes 3 games against top 25 teams and really good defensive teams in Arizona, Arkansas, and Texas Tech, they shot 42%. And so, like, banking on Creighton not being able to hit open threes for a second straight game, it was a big gamble, and it paid off. Credit to Fred Hoiberg and the guys I didn't think they were great flying out. I didn't think a lot of their contests. It's more of kind of the controlled chaos that we talked about.
They swarmed passing lanes really well.
Yes.
I don't know if they swarmed shooters well, because, like you said, there were a lot of open looks and high quality looks that Creighton teams of the past would have had a field day. Even if you're playing in a Civic Center in Hawaii with the softest rims in America, they probably would have also had a field day. But Sunday was a completely and totally different story. But yeah, I think they swarmed passing lanes well. They forced 16 turnovers, but yeah, the shot defending was not anything crazy.
But they executed the doubles, the pack in the paint really well, and Creighton went a solid 20 plus minutes of game time without paint points. Ryan Kalkbrenner had 2 dunks. That was Creighton's first 2 buckets of the game in the first 3 minutes. They did not score inside the paint until just before the under 4 timeout in the second half, and on a Kalkbrenner putback. So that's 20 solid minutes of game time without the Jays. They missed some shots in the paint, but most of the time they just didn't get there. And part of that was they had open looks from 3, and part of it was I thought I went on the White and Blue Review Blue Jay Beat podcast with my buddy Matt, and we kind of went back and forth on this. I thought a lot of their looks were good, but then I also thought they didn't work hard enough to generate anything else. Like, I thought they took the easy way out a lot of it, and they made some good passes, but I didn't I thought there were more opportunities to drive. There were more opportunities to post in as the defense was shifting. I thought there were opportunities to cut as opposed to just spacing the floor and waiting for the reversal, where you could have made it a shorter pass. And now you've got numbers. You got a 2-on-1 type of situation. I thought there were other ways that Creighton could have attacked what Nebraska did defensively that required more effort, required more intensity that they just didn't do. So I think a big part of this, you talked about after the Creighton-Nebraska women's game that went Creighton's way in decisive fashion. You talked about during the last several years of this rivalry, it seemed like Creighton had far more invested in this game, put more effort into it, put more intensity, emotion into it than Nebraska did, who tried to treat it as just another game. Now you got Sam Griesel on Nebraska's side of it, and I think his presence alone was enough to shift that, in addition to a Creighton team that, like you said, maybe was overlooking this game a little bit. They've got big aspirations coming off 3 really tough games in a row against really high-quality teams, or 4 actually. 4 straight games against ranked teams. They're thinking, oh, this is one you're not going to have to gear totally up for. You're going to be able to get away with a win here and then head out to Vegas and hope to get on a roll. They were not able to do that because of what Nebraska did and because of the shooting variance. And that's a credit to Nebraska. And listening to Sam Griesel talk about it after the game, that just kind of told you everything you needed to know. He hinted at it going into the game, how said like he had this one circled on his mental calendar for a long time. But then as the game got closer and closer, tried to put that aside, try to just lock back in to normal game prep, not try to put too much into this game. But you could see in the final seconds as the clock ran out at the end of the game, just his reaction, some of the plays that he and his teammates made, and then listening to him talk in the press conference afterward. He said this when he committed, this was the game he wanted to get most. And as a kid who grew up watching Nebraska and Creighton, he saw that rivalry as a kid. Obviously, the last several years, it's been Creighton dominated. And Creighton's a school like Nebraska didn't offer him. Like they brought him in for a workout late in the process. They took a look at him, didn't offer a scholarship out of high school. So I'm sure there was probably a little bit of that too, that he used the Nebraska not offering him to drive him up in North Dakota State. And I'm sure a little bit of that kind of existed there with the Creighton side of it too. So he said for a lot of reasons, and I think those were some of them. But this was a big time win for the program and for him in particular, coming back here to spend his 1 year in the program that he grew up cheering for.
Yeah. And I think more than anything, this may not be hasn't been very rivalry like recently in recent memory, but where it always is with the fans. And Sam Griesel's a Nebraska basketball fan. He knows he grew up in Lincoln. He grew up, talking about how he looked at, guys that any other fan base would just look at as ho-hum, okay college basketball players like Cookie Miller and Tony McRae, like they were superheroes.
Yeah.
And
Tony McRae in particular, he said he went there, like that was one of his dudes because he went to a camp there and like Tony really took an interest in him because he was playing well. And so that always kind of stuck with him. Yeah.
And I mean, he's a Husker now, and this win alone probably cemented him as a Husker fan favorite for many years to come. But more than anything, he's a fan, man, and he knows what that game meant to the fans. He talked about walking around Lincoln and people telling him just beat Creighton this year. Yeah. I'm sure that, that probably first and foremost played a part yesterday. But just, and, lot like you said, and like he said, a lot of variables. And he said when he committed, he wanted to change the culture and change the way the program is day to day. And I think an emphasis on the importance of this game every year is, a way to shift the program because, like I said, it definitely seemed like Creighton has been more invested in this matchup for a handful of years. It seemed like it was more of the same when you got the Creighton basketball account tweeting out a hype tape the night before the game that includes Grant Gibbs and Teran Petaway fighting on the floor in 2014 and all sorts of, other, Antoine Young, Doug McDermott, all sorts of stuff. And, the game was a sellout. They made that well known. The game's sold out. Here's this rivalry tape. Like, first time they've been home in almost a month. And that was kind of where it ended yesterday. It just seemed like Creighton expected a layup, get right game, and when things weren't going wrong early, they thought they were going to be able to just shoot their way out of it, and they wound up with the end result. I fully expected to see a healthy dose of Kalkbrenner. I said just before the tip, I'm fully expecting an alley-oop to Kalk on I didn't expect a pick and roll. That made sense, but I was a part of the rivalry for 3 years. I know that Mac likes to call something like that on the first play against Nebraska. If you go back and watch these games for the last number of years, if Creighton wins the tip, the vast majority of the time, it's a post either pick and roll like yesterday or just a rim run oop for a dunk to try to impose our will and be like, game on, we're here. And that was just kind of, they started off like that and they just tried to shoot their way out of it yesterday. And credit to Nebraska. Like we said, they had a plan, they executed it, and they stuck to it. And every time it looked like Creighton was going to do the patented, here we go, here comes the comeback, here comes the route, the run, the onslaught, whatever you want to call it, it just never came. And that is, who would have thought, especially with this Nebraska team and this Creighton team and the expectations coming in for both teams, not just for this game, but for the season and all that. So I'm still trying to process and get over what the hell we watched yesterday. But I know for many, whether it be just fans, former players, just winning that game, the season will be looked back on in a positive light.
And talked about Greasel. He finished with 18 points, hit a three at the end of the shot clock from way downtown, hand in his face. That was a big-time shot. 12 rebounds, 7 assists, just 2 turnovers, played 39 minutes, hardly left the floor. And he was there making plays when the team needed it most. And the other guy that was doing that was Derek Walker, who finished with 22 points on 11 of 16 shooting, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 22 points, a new career high, topping 20 that he just posted in that recently a couple games ago. He keeps upping his career high this season. He's just been unbelievable. And I'll start focusing as we kind of get in this game a little bit. Start focusing with Walker, and man, he was so good. And their game plan really was to just go at Ryan Kalkbrenner, the Big East Defensive Player of the Year, 7'1", one of the best rim protectors in the country. And the way they attacked him was so smart. I thought, and Kalkbrenner himself even said, like, I have to be better. Like, that's just basically was his takeaway from this game. And he's right. Like, he has to be better in all phases of the game if you're a Creighton fan. But he was a step slow. He's giving up angles to Walker. He was a little late, challenging some shots at times, mistimed it. And Derek was just so good at whether it's catching down low or facing up from the high post and attacking, getting his shoulder into him, extending, putting the ball up with great touch, and finishing over the top, finishing around, finishing through. A really good defensive player. And I went back and charted all his buckets. 10 of those 16 shot attempts were basically just one-on-one Kalkbrenner and Walker. And he made 6 of those. So 6 of 10. So it wasn't necessary. I think in hindsight, it was just complete domination. He did stop him a few times, but what Nebraska did a good job of is mixing in. They got him some pick and roll touches. They got him the ball on the move. They got him a chance where he could catch and finish in between, giving him the ball to where he can go attack. So that was really impressive. I guess he was 4 of 6 on shots where it wasn't necessarily directly at Kalkbrenner. It was pick and roll situations where you're playing in a number of situation or things like that. A broken play after an offensive rebound where Kalkbrenner's out chasing the shooter or whatever. But really impressive performance by Walker. And that's where it started. He scored their first 3 buckets, had 10 points in the first half, got in foul trouble in the first half, and then again early in the second half, but came back in and made some huge plays down the stretch as Creighton tried to get back into it.
Yeah. I mean, Derek, what a difference he makes, man. I mean, it's so weird describing like an undersized small ball 5-man who's 24 years old and in his 6th season of college basketball, just continuing to get better, like just continuing to improve as much as Walker has, and just the impact he has on this team. If I going into the game yesterday, if I had to pick a player to be the impact player, I maybe would have talked about Walker defensively, but just on the offensive end, to see him just keep going back to the well of dribble drive, attacking the rim. I mean, that was, I think, probably might have been the most, aside from the final result, obviously, just the success rate that he saw on that was probably the most surprising. Just keeping on going back to it. That was the most surprising thing of the game for me, aside from obviously the final result and Creighton's shooting woes, but that's up there too.
22 points and 16 shot attempts in 23 minutes. And this is a guy who last year, again, like 15 was his career high. Even when he was playing well, they never really went to him. He was pick and roll. They found him. Lonzo Verge found him in that pick and roll. They had good chemistry there. Occasionally he'd get a post touch here and there. But for the most part, he was just kind of a play finisher or a play initiator where you had him as a passer, more so than the guy that you're going to get you buckets. This year, he is getting them buckets all on his own time and time again. And that, I mean, they're a completely different team with both Griesel and Walker playing together. And this is kind of the vision that Hoiberg had when he put this roster together. This is what it was supposed to look like. There's still very much still flaws on this team. Doesn't suddenly mean that Creighton's going to the Final Four or Nebraska's going to the Final Four after beating Creighton. They still got a lot of work to do, and they've got 2 really tough tests coming up again. But in this, I mean, they've taken care of business, and now they scored an upset, which is more than probably what we've seen in the last 3 years, outside of some like weird late season games. So that 2-man game with Walker and Griesel, those 2 have played so well off of each other, and that's ultimately how they shut this game down in the second half.
Yeah, and I think kind of the forgotten man per se, who I think was huge down the stretch, was Juwan Gary. You and I had kind of been talking ad nauseum about we don't know if Nebraska can win if Juwan Gary just keeps chucking threes. He only took 1, and he made it. And
it was a big shot too, and his shot clock.
Yep, was huge, and he finished 5 for 5 from the field with 9 boards. Just that was kind of what I want to be the prototypical role for Juwan Gary going forward if Nebraska's going to have success. Crashing the glass, cuss to the basket. Obviously, the offensive rebounds he's talked about, and professed his love for offensive rebounds when we've heard from him. And Gary stepped up in part because Creighton did a really good job defending CJ Wilcher and Keisei Tominaga. I joked on our last episode, what the hell does Creighton staff think watching this film from Boston College of Keisei and CJ going off? They obviously took that to heart because that was the highlight of Creighton's defensive game plan, was how they defended Wilcher and Keisei. CJ still got 7 shots off, missed all 5 of his threes, and all of Keisei's attempts were from 2, which I think Creighton definitely wanted, and Fred Hoiberg definitely did not want, because all of his attempts were either tough 2s or weird off-balance attempts at the rim. and that's kind of the polar opposite of what
what we just talked about.
What we just talked about, exactly. It's the K-State roller coaster. So credit to Creighton for how they defended those two shooters, but Nebraska found a way with both of them not being much of any factor whatsoever.
Yeah, they defended those two well. They did not defend anybody else really well, and there weren't adjustments either. Like they just never sent doubles. There was one time I think that they dug in, like Sharif Mitchell was out there, only played 3 minutes, dug in on a Walker drive and forced a turnover. Outside of that, they basically just sat back and watched both Walker and Shireman go to work, pound the ball, get to their spots, and go up for their shots without ever sending any help. I don't know if that going in they thought our guys are better than theirs. We're counting on you guys to win these one-on-one matchups, and they just didn't. But even if that was a game plan going in, which is fine, those are two very good defensive players, and it's okay to like your matchup going in. But when it's clearly not going your way, you got to adjust, and they just never did. And that's part of the extra effort, the intensity that I talk about that Creighton just seemed to lack. Like there were, I think, some big plays down the stretch where I think there were 2 or 3 times where Sam dribbled the ball 8 times to get to his spot and went up and scored on it, where you had Juwan Gary's man just standing in no man's land. They weren't out to guard Gary, but they didn't actually go and double, dig in, do anything. And so that was, again, Creighton's not gonna have fun watching back that film. But
no, not at all.
Kind of the story of the game. So it's 25-23 at halftime. Nebraska, kind of ugly half for both teams, but Nebraska did what it needed to get into the game with the chance to win in the second half. And it was 31-30 with 13 minutes left. And this was the first kind of big stretch here where Creighton takes the lead here. Then maybe the doubt starts to settle in for Nebraska. Creighton's got confidence. They're able to kind of get on a roll here. They answered with an 11-3 run that included C.J. Wilcher's steal and dunk, which I don't know that I'd ever seen him do that before. And then they also got the Wilhelm Breidenbach 3 over Kalkbrenner. Where did that come from? Bottom of the net with a hand in his face after bricking a wide open one earlier in the game.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Nebraska only made 3 threes in the game, and 2 of them were what the hell threes. With the Breidenbach one in Kalkbrenner's eye hole, and then the Sam one from almost the FNBO logo to end the shot clock.
Yeah,
and that Sam 3 was when I was kind of like, oh, this is different today.
Yeah. And then they Sam Griesel pick and roll finish, back-to-back plays where took advantage of 2 different defenders, and Kalkbrenner was slow to slide over and cut him off. Just put his head down and went to the basket and finished. Again, Griesel making huge plays. And then the next one after that was the shot or the Griesel backing down Trey Alexander, who's 6'4", good shooter, but Griesel can shoot over the top of him. And he wasn't he was ceding too much ground as well. Earlier on, he forced some tough ones. Sam had some ugly shot attempts early in the game. But this one, he got right down to the charge circle, right over the top, little baby hook, again, with Arthur Kaluma just standing there watching his teammate get scored on. So at the end of that, like that's, again, 11-3 run right there. Griesel had 6 of those points by himself. And then you had 2 big buckets from role players who had not played well in the game to that point, but made big shots during that stretch. So at that point, it's now 42-33 with 7 and change to go. So Creighton's got a chance to take control of this game. Instead, Nebraska pushes it back out. And now Creighton, again, is in a position to chase. And Greg McDermott called a timeout at that point, drew something up. They got the kind of the handoff, pick and roll into a Kalkbrenner lob. And then immediately answered, Keisei Tominaga throws in the garbage contested floater that same exact shot he had missed previously and gets it to go in off the glass. So again, another role player stepping up and making a big shot when the team needed him to, despite not having a good game. And that's Nebraska just made plays down the stretch. It got contributions from a lot of different guys, even though it was Griesel and Walker doing the majority of the damage. they got just enough from everybody else to come out with this win. And then after that play is when Francisco Farabello, that 4-point play in the corner that cut that thing down to 5. So now you got the momentum on your side. Creighton has a chance to take control of this game, and Nebraska immediately responds with Sam Griesel back cutting for an and one. And Griesel hadn't really cut all game. Every time it was come and go get the ball, just fake like he was going to come take the handoff from Walker, cut it back. Alexander got beat badly, and then made the mistake worse by going in and slapping at the ball, giving him the and one. So you immediately answer a 4-point play with a 3-point play of your own to stretch that thing back out to 8. They go down, they get the kind of give and go to the Kalkbrenner for the finish. Now he's got a chance to go to the line for an and one, misses the free throw. And so again, that's another point where Creighton had a chance to kind of respond immediately and miss the free throw. It's a point left on the board, ends up being important as you get farther down the game. And then the trade stops. They got to stop there where Derek Walker got a dunk blocked by Ryan Nembhard, which maybe lends credence to the joke that Fred Hoiberg made afterward about Hoiberg being able to jump higher than Walker at this point. But so great play by Creighton to go around and block that shot, and they've got a chance to directly turn that momentum into another play, cut that thing down, and Nembhard just needlessly, I don't know what, I guess maybe it was just Bandamel, the way that he had been chasing him and bothering the heck out of him all game long, but gets past him, got him on his hip, and it's basically a 2-on-1 with Nembhard and Kalkbrenner on the weak side. So he's getting a layup if Walker steps to him, or it's a dunk for Kalkbrenner. Gets that off arm, that right arm flying up, hits Bandamel in the face. It's obvious offensive foul, the easiest call the rest had all game long in a big situation. And so instead of scoring there, they to cut that thing down to 4, I believe it would have been at that point. They go down the other way, and another 8 dribble back down from Griesel, who in this time Kalkbrenner, because Shireman, same thing that Kluma didn't go help, just stand there playing in no man's land. Kalkbrenner stepped to him this time, which opened up the dump down for Derek Walker. And now suddenly, instead of a 4-point game, now it's an 8-point game. And so that's a huge swing right there. And then Creighton was basically chasing the way after that. I think that sequence there, after the 4-point play, giving up the back cut, and then not being getting that offensive foul instead of a bucket there, those plays right there pretty much broke Creighton. And those were 2 of the biggest plays of the game. And again, Walker, Griesel, those were the guys that were there to make those plays. So at the end of that stretch, they managed to push it back to 53-43 with just under 4 minutes to play. And then it was basically trading buckets the rest of the way from there. Yeah. Creighton just wasn't able to dig into the lead enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just some exclamation points down the stretch. Yeah, that Nembhard, I completely agree that offensive foul was curtains. I know the crowd didn't like it, Mac didn't like it, but it was pretty cut and dry. And you could definitely tell that somebody in that office rewatched last year's game tape with how much Fred Hoiberg talked about the emphasis on stopping Ryan Nembhard. He had kind of his breakout game at Pinnacle Bank Arena last year in this matchup, which was like the 3rd game of the year. I hope that never happens again. But they definitely, that was Bandamel's job. That's what it seemed like. They were still doing the switch everything, controlled chaos thing that we talked about. But I think task number 1 for Emmanuel Bandamel was Ryan Nembhard, and did an effective job chasing him around for most of the game.
6 points, 3 of 13 shooting, 4 assists, 4 turnovers. And this is the guy who just completely dominated, dictated the pace of play in the game a year ago. And Hoiberg talked about that. Like, he just dominated that game. And so we had to find a way to make life tough on him. And that was, again, taking away the Kalkbrenner loss and locking down on, I was curious how those defensive assignments would go, like who's taking Nemhard, who's taking Trey Alexander, and Vanderbilt ended up taking Nemhard, which that's almost always how it's going to be. You're going to have Vanderbilt on the point guard. I thought that would create opportunities for Trey Alexander, and it just didn't. He also had an off game, second straight one. He was 9 points on 3 of 12 shooting. All 3 of those points came from three. He was 0 for 4 inside the arc. And he's the one guy that has a chance to, like we're talking about Nebraska, packing the paint, taking everything away, making it tough on Creighton. He's the one guy that can get inside the arc and get to that mid-range pull-up. Mm-hmm. Got a really good mid-range jumper. Just could not get it to go in this game. So that's another avenue that Creighton had to attack the way that Nebraska was defending them, that they just couldn't hit the shots. The threes and those Alexander mid-ranges just did not go down. And that's how you end up with 53 points in the game. So it was credit to Creighton or Nebraska, because I did not think they'd be able to guard Creighton nearly as effectively as they did.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you're missing from everywhere. I mean, there were some bunnies, shots at the rim that Creighton missed, like you said, the mid range, and then obviously the 30 missed threes. Just could never really find a rhythm. Even when they were trying to come back, there were guys passing up shots. There was guys just not being aggressive, and it was definitely eye opening on both ends of the floor. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good summation of the game from start to finish. Obviously, I was asked this morning on my weekly radio appearance. Already people asking, will we look back and say, did this game save Fred Hoiberg's job? To which I was quick to say, well, the last time Nebraska won in this series, the coach still got fired 3 months later. And I had a front row seat to that back in 2018. But this, I think you could definitely tell. I think there were 2 people you could tell what that game meant yesterday, especially us talking to them in the post game. One was Sam Griesel, and the other was Fred Hoiberg. Him coming off the court after he did his radio hit on the Husker Sports Network, getting the Husker fans that were in there stayed to cheer for him and shake his hand, high five him as he came off the court, and then the man who rarely shows any emotion because, well, 1, he's got a pacemaker in, and 2, he's a professional, so he knows how to conduct. He's never going to beat you over the top in any way, form, or fashion. Was cheesing, cracking jokes, and just was talking about how big that win was, because he's been pretty open. He knows what this year means for him as a coach, and to win that game yesterday on the road has got to mean a lot to Fred Hoiberg. And what will it mean at the end of the year? We'll talk to you in March, because there's still 20 Big Ten games left to play, starting on Wednesday at Assembly Hall, and then the number 4 team in the country comes to Pinnacle Bank Arena. So it doesn't get any easier.
No, it does not. And to that being said, Nebraska is playing at a much higher level than we've ever seen during the Hoiberg era. These last 3 games since Walker's been back in and incorporated and has worked out the rust. With the win over Creighton, they've climbed up to number 78 in KenPom. So Nebraska is officially a top 80 team. I don't know the last time that was true. And
they also gained 4 projected wins on KenPom.
Yeah. Wow.
One.
And if we want to go super small sample size theater, over on Bart Torvik, you can adjust the window that you're looking at. So since December 27th or November 27th, which was Walker's second game, so starting with the Florida State game, Nebraska is 29th in the country in Torvik's rankings. Just looking at this last week or so. Again, small sample size, but that shows the level that they played at with Walker in the lineup.
Yeah, so having your best player makes a difference.
And it makes everything easier for everybody else as well. Everybody is kind of put back into their place instead of having to do something that they're not equipped to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Derek, even after a career day, was super complimentary of his teammates yesterday. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it was kind of to the extent of, I trust my teammates and they trust me, and that's what's best for everybody.
Yeah, actually, let's see here. I believe. Okay, yeah, because I transcribed that one because that was basically he was just saying his teammates were telling him like, hey, this is like just go score, and the confidence he was giving them.
Yeah.
That yeah, I guess I didn't put it in my story. I tweeted it, but yeah, he just said like, hey, these guys give me confidence. They tell me to go score, so that's what I did essentially. And he credited the guys for making the game easy for him, and I'm sure they feel the same way about him. So this, again, like we were hesitant to write the final book on this team based on what we saw the first 5 games because just never didn't know what it would look like with Walker back out there, and now we're getting a chance to see. Again, it's too early again to make any declarations. We'll see where they are. If they get one of these next 2 wins, then maybe we're really cooking with something. If they get blown out by 20 both games, it will be tough. It'll be hard to lose that momentum. But they still got 18 more left after that, and still have some time to keep working Walker in. So this is a team that we're going to have to keep learning about as the season goes on. We'll see kind of what Hoiberg can do as a coach as teams adjust, mold their game plans to take away what they're doing now. And we'll see if this roster has enough flexibility, versatility to combat that. But right now, they're playing at a really high level, and they're going to need to because coming up, like you said, they've got two more top 25 teams. Indiana is currently 10th in KenPom, coming off of their first loss of the season and a 15-point loss to Rutgers, in which they scored 48 points. Jalen Hood-Schifino, their talented freshman guard, did not play in that game, so hard to know what to make too much of that. I don't know what his status is.
I read it was a back injury.
Okay.
I've got I can ask some people how he's doing, but yeah, for the 4th year, Fred Hoiberg's Huskers get to go to Assembly Hall in the early December Big Ten slate. And it just ever so happens that this is probably the best Indiana team since Fred's been here. It's definitely always a tough place to play. But yeah, like Hood-Schifino definitely, I think that's going to be kind of an indicator of how this game could go, because from what I've seen from Indiana, he's kind of the only guard who can create.
Well, our old friend Xavier Johnson.
How could I forget?
For a COVID year.
How could I forget about my favorite Nebraska recruit to drive around campus? How could I forget about him? No, but yeah. So he's
averaging about 12 and 5 for them, and it's been pretty efficient. He's actually shooting threes, well, not on high volume, but he's hitting them. Miller Kopp, the former Northwestern shooter, is over 50% on the season on better than 4 attempts a game. So they are definitely, like, the game plan isn't going to work on him. You don't want to dare him to take threes. But it's Trace Jackson Davis. It starts and ends with him. 18 a game, shooting almost 68% from the field, 8 assists over 8.5 rebounds, over 2 assists a game, 2 blocks a game. He's a great rim protector. It's going to be a lot of fun watching Walker and Jackson Davis go head to head, because Jackson Davis, I mean, they're about the same size. So physically they match up well, and we'll see kind of what Walker's kind of new and improved offensive repertoire looks like against this Indiana team and a guy like Trace Jackson Davis. Kind of the other guy to keep an eye on is Malik Renaud, another talented freshman, only playing 17 minutes a game, but he's been really effective in those 17 minutes offensively. 8.5 points a game on almost 60% shooting, and about 4 boards a game. So he's a guy to look out for. But it is a solid team. They got a lot of really good role players. Race Thompson, Jordan Geronimo, Trey Galloway, guys that have played a lot of minutes for them.
Guys that I feel like have been there I feel some of those guys I feel like played for Tom Crean. I've heard those names for so long, it seems like. But it just, it feels like every couple years Nebraska plays with fire at Assembly Hall. I don't know what it is. It's kind of going back to the early Miles teams. They just randomly would go to Indiana and play really well. I'm sure after the Creighton game, there's going to be a lot of defensive focus on Derek and defending the inside with TJD and Race Thompson. So we'll see. We'll see what it's looking like on Wednesday night. And then the game that arguably
that game's on Wednesday, and
Wednesday
then,
night. I said Tuesday night. Good gracious, my brain is mush. Look at me. Yeah, Wednesday night. Wednesday.
And then Saturday they return home to host Purdue, who
is the number 4 team in the country as of today, just like we all predicted.
Number 1 on offense. They have not lost yet, and they're 8-0, and they let's see what's the closest margin of victory. 5 points. Almost every other game has been double digits. That was Marquette, who still not sure what Marquette is at this point, but they've been in control. Almost every win is by double digits. Just beat Minnesota by 19
in a game where human giant Zach Edey finished with 31 points and 22 rebounds. So
National Player of the Year front runner Zach Edey, the 7-foot behemoth who is averaging 23 and 13 and 2 blocks a game, and he's playing 30 minutes a game. That might be that's kind of the one thing. Edey was always kind of more of a novelty. He played 15, 20 minutes a game. Obviously, they had Travion Williams last year. Edey, not a guy that moves a whole lot, but you get him the ball and he can finish. Now he's just straight up their best player. They build everything around him, shooting 60% from the field. And again, at 6'4" or 7'4", there's not a lot you can do with him. He's so big and strong and has good touch. And then around him, they got a lot of pieces that just fit. I did not expect Purdue to be this good because I did not know that Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith would both be as good as freshmen as they have been. Both guys shooting better than 36% from 3. Lawyer's 12 a game. And Smith kind of running the point there, 9 a game, 4 assists, kind of getting the ball where it needs to be, 5 rebounds, made some big plays. And then they just got a kind of collection of other guys stepping up here and there with Caleb First and Mason Gillis, Trey Kaufman-Wren, Ethan Morton's out there starting. He kind of went there as a point guard, and they've got him. They kind of got a 3-point guard lineup there with Morton, Fletcher, Lawyer, and Braden Smith there, all averaging better than 3 assists a game. And then David Jenkins from one-time Jackrabbit from South Dakota State, who was there before. I'm trying to think of the timeline. I'm not sure if Sam played against him or not. I think maybe his last year there, but he's been in college so long and been so many stops. It's hard to keep track. But so they just got a lot of pieces that fit together and that make everything make sense around Edey. So I have no idea what kind of game plan Nebraska is going to come up with to try to slow that down. But good luck to the coaches as they get ready to prepare for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm interested to see what the environment's like on Saturday. Coming off the Creighton win, kind of putting Wednesday night on the back burner almost. I think, if they somehow pull it off at Indiana, then it turn it up even more. But we've kind of haven't seen PBA get charged up much in the Fred Hoiberg era. Crowd kind of got into it late against Boston College, but they were running away with it. Now you've got a top 5 team coming on a Saturday afternoon. It's no longer football season, but they're, after upsetting Creighton, we'll see how they look on Wednesday night, obviously. But could be a fun, juiced up atmosphere on Saturday afternoon in Lincoln. I'm sure a certain newly hired football coach will likely make an appearance to try and get people jazzed up. Kind of had that thought yesterday. I'm thinking like, man, this Purdue game could be nuts. And then I remember the last time they hired a football coach, and about a week later, KU came to town and they brought him out before the game. So it's kind of just like things that make me go, maybe this could be a fun atmosphere again. Make it feel like what we used to see somewhat regularly at Pinnacle Bank Arena.
And I bet it will be if they find some way to knock off Indiana on the road. That's kind of the part you'd like to have a home game directly after that win over Creighton to kind of capture that momentum. Now it's almost like you're doubling down, where if it goes poorly up there in Bloomington, will you still have the same feel? Or if you win, then I imagine they'll be super charged up just to welcome the team back to play at home. So we'll see how that goes. We will be back again next week to recap all that action. And in the meantime, follow my work at hailvarsity.com. Follow Bigelow's work at huskersillustrated.com. I know you wrote a gamer up from that Creighton game. So did I.
I wrote my first game story. No time like the present to write my first game story yesterday. You can find that over on my social medias, on my Twitter at Jacob A. Bigelow if you want to take a peek. And like Jacob said, go take it. We both wrote some game recaps of what I'm just going to call a day to remember for Nebraska basketball fans. And it was a Sunday that I still talking about it is kind of crazy to think about that happened. But just for reference, if you want to invest in the possibilities of a fun atmosphere in Lincoln, you can get a ticket for $5 right now. If you want to invest for Saturday, get a ticket for $5 if you feel like.
Are we sure about that? The last time we talked about ticket advice, you were way off base.
I am looking at this right now.
Okay.
This could change. I am looking right now. You can get a ticket for $6. It is in the upper bowl, but it's a ticket for $6. So that is what I will finish on. So.
All right. Well, until next time, this is the Nebraska Shootaround podcast.